everyone. My name is Seth, and today I want to give you my review of Rebel Moon. So Rebel Moon Part 1 just came out, and I have been pretty excited for this. I'm typically a fan of Zack Snyder's films. I would say that I like Batman vs. Superman more than probably most people. However, I don't necessarily know if this did it for me. But before I go any farther, go ahead and like this video, hit subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a video. So to give you some background behind this film, Zack Snyder actually pitched this as a Star Wars movie to Disney after Disney bought Lucasfilm, and they passed. And I gotta say, as a huge Star Wars fan, I'm pretty glad that they ended up passing, because I don't necessarily think that this film would be a good fit, and I don't think it would be a good addition to the Star Wars universe. So please, all of the big Zack Snyder fans, don't come after me. Like I said, I enjoy pretty much most of his movies. Like, I think 300 is good. I love Batman vs. Superman. I really like Man of Steel. I don't like Sucker Punch. I think that Sucker Punch is a bad film, but I enjoy quite a few of Zack Snyder's films. But this one I felt myself getting bored a lot throughout this film, and that's not what you want. You definitely don't want to be bored during a film that is supposed to be like a big sci-fi action epic film. I think there's a lot of potential here, but in this film, with what we were shown, it just didn't draw me in. The world didn't draw me in, and the characters didn't draw me in. And that's just from what we've seen. Like I said, I think this world has potential. I think there's potential in these characters. I just don't necessarily think it was portrayed the best here in this particular film. I think there is a lot of problems with the script here. This almost feels kind of patched together from different scripts, and they just don't really seem to flow together. All of the scenes don't flow one to another, and they just kind of like, all right, here's a scene. All right, now here's the end of that scene. Here's another scene for you. Like, if you understand what I'm kind of trying to explain here, they just don't all cohesively work and flow together. I also think that there are way too many long scenes where the whole goal is just an exposition dump, where that's the whole goal of the scene, is just to tell you a bunch of information. And that does not work for me. I think that's actually really boring screenwriting. And I think there actually is very little that we see going on screen. I think there's very little character or story arcs throughout this film. And unfortunately, I think this film is very slow. I feel like it took a while to really get into the film. And I kept checking to see how much longer was left in the film, and that's not great. I think the dialogue in this film is very odd. It just feels very wooden. It kind of feels like rejected Star Wars dialogue from before they figured out that world. I know there was a story from the original Star Wars set with Harrison Ford talking to George Lucas. They were talking over some of the dialogue, and Harrison Ford told George Lucas, you can write this stuff, but you can't say this stuff. And so they changed some of the stuff for the screen. And of course, is Star Wars known for having the most eloquent and like perfect sounding dialogue? Absolutely not. But they found a thing that works. It's not as wooden and it's not as clunky. But I think a lot of the dialogue here seems like the dialogue that Harrison Ford was referencing, that you just can't say, you can't put on screen. It just doesn't sound good, and it is just not delivered well by the actors. And I think the writing here really lets down the characters. I didn't care about any of these characters, really. I never connected with them. I never really felt what they felt. And honestly, we didn't get a lot of feeling from the characters anyway. We met these characters all throughout the film, and they can all kind of be boiled down to one thing. And there's really no depth to any of these characters at all. They all feel wooden. And other than like maybe two characters, all of the dialogue sounds like it could be coming from the same character. And I'm going to be honest, I can't really remember any of the characters' names. I know Jamon Hansu is like General something. I can't remember his name. I know he was a general. And I think Sofia Boutella's character is Cora. But other than that, like, I really can't remember any of these characters' names. They just don't stand out to me. I did like Charlie Hunnam's character, but honestly, that's about it. And the villains were just bad mustache twirling villains. Again, there were no depth there to any of those villains. And I don't even think that they are like the fun, pure evil kind of villain. They're just bad people, and I didn't really find it fun to watch. And I think, unfortunately, because of the writing and because of, unfortunately, the bad characters, this led to some bad performances. I'd like Sofia Boutella in some of her other small roles. I think she's done a really good job. But this film and this performance did not convince me that she can take on a lead in one of these like big sci-fi, like tentpole kind of films. She seemed very wooden, and unfortunately it was a very flat performance from her, but she was not the only one. Just about every other person in this film was exactly the same way. Very wooden, very flat. It's honestly everyone but like Charlie Hunnam, and even then, he didn't give like a great performance. It was just about average. Djimon Hounsou is really cool in this, but I don't think he's really cool because of his character. I think he's really cool just because Djimon Hounsou is a really cool dude. And with all of the story issues and the script issues and the character issues, I was really hoping that this would absolutely deliver on the action, which Zack Snyder can definitely do, but it didn't here for me. It just kind of felt mediocre. He can direct some awesome action, like the warehouse sequence in Batman vs. Superman is one of my favorite Batman sequences ever put to film. It was so cool, so well done, but there wasn't anything like that in this film. I think a lot of the action here was just kind of visual noise. You've heard me talk about it recently in some of the past reviews, but if the action doesn't really have strong narrative purpose, it's just kind of visual noise. It doesn't really add much to the film. I think a lot of the action here, unfortunately, doesn't really have a narrative purpose. And when it did have some sort of narrative purpose, it did not have an impact to me. It just wasn't very exciting to watch as a whole, and the choreography was just okay. Sometimes the choreography kind of dipped into not that great, but overall, I think it was just okay. And that was a little bit odd for me watching a Zack Snyder film. I never felt the stakes of the action. It just all kind of felt like whatever. I didn't really care that much about the characters, and so I didn't really care that much when they were put in danger. And I gotta say, not everything needs to have slow motion. I know Zack Snyder is known for slow motion. I get it. But this is a little bit overboard. It is so much that it started to pull me out of the film whenever we would have slow motion. Action sequence, here's some slow motion. Approaching an animal, here's some more slow motion. Picking up some dirt, oh, here's some more slow motion. A character just turning to the camera, more slow motion. It's just over the top. And it honestly kind of started to be funny to me. I think, honestly, the slow motion starts to feel like a waste of time. I would have liked to see this film without as much slow motion. The CGI in this film sometimes confuses me because sometimes it looks fantastic and other times it looks pretty bad. There were times where it pulled me out of the film. Like sometimes the models of like the ships and them flying through cities or whatever, maybe it looked like it was pulled right from 2003, but sometimes it looked absolutely at home in 2023. It's just odd to me that there's that big of a difference. I've talked about the volume some and how sometimes you can tell that it's being used versus practical sets. Well, here, I don't even think that's the issue. I think sometimes you can tell they're just standing in a big green room, just completely green screen everything. Some of the practical makeup effects were really, really well done, and I would have liked to see more. Overall, I'll have to say that this film just did not work for me, and it honestly made me a little bit less excited for part 2. But hey, I will still be here for part 2. You will still get my review for part 2. I'm still hoping that it can tap into that potential. Because like I said, I think this world and this story has potential. I can see some great stories being told here. I can see the glimpses of greatness in some of these characters, but it just wasn't shown here. I'm hoping in part 2, they can tap into that a little bit more. Unfortunately, I was disappointed in this film with all of the script issues, with all of the character issues, with all of the story issues, things like that. I can't give it more than a 1.5 out of 5 stars. But that's it. That's my review of Rebel Moon Part 1. Have you seen this film? Let me know what you thought in the comment section down below. I would love to have a conversation with you about it. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a video. You can also follow me on social media pretty much anywhere at CinemaSeth, and I'll see you next time.